and welcome to the Art of Being Human. We're going to continue today with the cognitive distortions, the disordered thoughts. Those are big words, but basically the way that you think. And my purpose in doing this is that we all think in certain ways. These are not defense mechanisms, the way that we react to stress, but the ways that we think. And the ways that we think can portray who we are, and we tend to believe what we think. If I think that I'm a lousy person for some reason, then I start to believe what I think. Whatever thought processes you are putting into your mind, you tend to believe them as true. It's your perception, and your perception of the truth is truth to you. Now, it may not actually be the truth, but as far as you're concerned, it's the truth, because that's what you're thinking and that's what you're believing. And if you're believing what you're thinking and you don't make any changes, you can believe things that are not true, but you're convinced they are true. And it can color your emotions, it can color your personality, it can change the way you think, and as a result of that, you can become quite negative about yourself. At the same time, you can become depressed and very unhappy. And we want to change that if we can, because nobody's perfect. Everybody has a foible here or there, and it doesn't mean that you're an unholy person. It doesn't mean that you're an unworthy person. That's the word I'm really looking for, because you've done something here or there that isn't perfect. So, and as I said before, you have to watch children, because it's very easy for them to think of themselves in a very negative sense, especially if children have been abused. It's my fault I was abused. There must have been something wrong with me. I couldn't stop it. Why couldn't I say no? And so with children and with adults, because a lot of adults have been abused when they were children, you have to let them know that things that happen to you aren't always your own fault. If you've been abused, it's not your fault. There's a power mechanism that's going on here that you were not strong enough to fight. Why? Because you're probably too young, too intimidated. It doesn't matter. If you've been abused, do not ever think of it as being your fault. Nobody who is a professional ever believes that the person who's being abused is to blame. They just are not to blame. And if you can understand that, you can give yourself a lot of freedom. But to go on with this, the next one that we have covered distorted thoughts, all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, the neutral filter, the mental filter, disqualifying the positive. We're getting into jumping to conclusions. How many people do you know jump to conclusions? You make assumptions. When you're jumping to a conclusion, you're making assumptions and you're believing those assumptions are true. But those assumptions are not always based on fact. A husband who believes his wife is cheating on him, and there are all kinds of mental conditions in which that happens, but a wife who is not cheating, but her husband thinks that she is, he'll put her through all kinds of mental agony. He is assuming that she is cheating on him, but there may be absolutely no evidence in fact that that's going on. You start to believe things that are not true because you're jumping to conclusions, and those conclusions can be inaccurate. The problem is you're going to think of them as being accurate, and when you do that, you miss the point, and you cause harm to yourself and harm to other people as well. So let me give you some examples. You teach a class, someone nods off and they fall asleep. And you figure, I've got to be the worst teacher in the world because I can't keep my students awake. They're always so bored. Well, that may not be the problem. I taught a psychology class in a high school for a few years when I was still teaching high school before I became a college professor. And I had one boy, and it was a psychology class, and most of my students loved the class. They were awake and ready for anything that I presented to them. He was nodding off. And I liked this kid. And he says, I really like your class, Miss Rainey. I don't know why I keep falling asleep. Well, I suspected that he had a medical condition, and that's what it was, because he was not an untruthful person. And when he said he liked my class, I really did believe him, because he seemed to show a lot of interest until he dropped off. So I called his parents and I says, I think there may be something wrong because he keeps falling asleep, but he wants to stay awake and he can't stay awake. And I think there may be something physically wrong and you need to get that checked out. And what they said to me was, we've noticed it at home too. He's actively engaged, he seems interested, suddenly he's asleep. And so they took him to the doctor. He was diagnosed, and they medicated him and treated him, and after that he was fine. He didn't fall asleep anymore. You can't just judge and come to conclusions if you don't know what's going on. You can't just, if you're raising children, scream at them for doing something without at least knowing what the reason is for whatever they're doing. They may have a reason for what they're doing. You need to show them that you're more understanding than that. So to jump to conclusions is not a good thing. You see somebody on the street, they don't speak to you even though you speak to them. They're probably so distracted that they don't even notice that you're there. They're thinking about something else, and they don't know that you're there. You assume they don't like you anymore. They just didn't notice you. There are all kinds of examples. You call somebody, they don't return your call. What's the matter? They don't like me anymore. No, they were busy. The phone system was down. They didn't get the call. People have been emailing me, and my Facebook went out. It's back now, but my Facebook went out. They couldn't reach me. And so I tried to call people and say, I can't use my Facebook right now. It's offline. For some reason, there's something wrong. I have an old tablet, and so I have problems with it. Don't assume the worst, even though it's tempting to do that. Now, who tends to think the worst? It's going to be those that have been traumatized the most. It's going to be those that are going to have the most in their background that have been hurtful to them, because they're going to automatically jump to the conclusion that they're at fault, or they've done something wrong, or somebody's mad at them for this or that or the other. If you've had a very healthy childhood and you weren't abused and you had the attention that you need, then it's likely that you're not going to jump to those kinds of negative conclusions. It doesn't mean that you won't jump to some kind of a conclusion, but it may not be negative. Well, she's busy, so she didn't call me back. She's out of town, or she's on a shopping trip, so she didn't call me back. And your conclusions will be a lot more reasonable than if you have had an abusive background or people really haven't treated you right, and you jump to the conclusion that you're not liked, you're not revered, you're not being told the truth, people are avoiding you, you don't want to have anything to do with them. Now, the problem with jumping to conclusions that are negative is that you believe they're true, and then you react to that. Well, I'm not going to have anything more to do with that person because they don't like me. If they liked me, they would get right back to me. So therefore, I have concluded accurately, even though it's not accurate, that they don't like me and they don't want to have anything to do with me. So what am I going to do? I'm going to back off. I'm going to not be with them. I'm not going to do lunch with them anymore. I'm going to isolate myself from them because they don't like me anyway, and so therefore, why should I have anything to do with them? Very bad conclusion because you don't know it's the truth. And then when you find out the truth, sometimes you're embarrassed because you can realize that what you thought wasn't right. Now remember, the brain does not know the difference between a real and an imagined fact. If somebody runs into a theater and said, fire, everybody out, everybody runs out because there's a fire, except there may not be a fire. But somebody did it as a prank or something. Or if you call somebody and they don't get back to you, you think that maybe they're angry at you, they're avoiding you, and so therefore your actions as a result of that can be completely inappropriate. Especially if they say, oh, Pat, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. I'm just using myself as an example here. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you, but I was gone. I forgot to take my phone with me and I was gone for 2 or 3 days. Or it could be a very logical explanation that makes sense. And then you realize that your conclusions weren't right. One of the things you might want to do to help yourself if you have this kind of a thought pattern is kind of make notations. And I don't believe in a lot of notations, but so-and-so doesn't call, why, question mark. And then if you want to put what your conclusions are, they're avoiding me. And then it turns out a day or so later you hear from them and they're apologetic because they couldn't get back to you because there was a bad family situation or whatever it was. And then it makes perfect sense. And you can scratch that off the list. That's not what happened. My conclusions were wrong. You see, whenever you have a disordered thought, it changes your life because it's always going to change it to a negative thing. And you're the one who's going to be the loser. I'm mad at somebody. I think they're mad at me. They call me, and I don't respond to them because I think they're mad at me. Maybe they're inviting me to their child's birthday party, or maybe they're inviting me to a concert, or maybe they're inviting me to some other kinds of thing, or they want to talk to me about the problem they have that they're not sure what to do about. What do you think, Pat? What do you think I should do about this? And I do get calls like that. So I have to be careful. I don't want to jump to conclusions and think something that's not true, and as a result of that, cut somebody off that might need me. And especially if the conclusions are not true. But you see, this is a normal, everyday thing. Many people do this, and they don't even think of themselves as being wrong. They think of themselves as being right, and somehow later on they found out that they were wrong. Why not just assume that you don't know? You don't know why a person ignored you. You don't know why a person didn't call you back. You don't know why various things happen. And until you know for sure, and you can be absolutely sure, why not just suspend judgment? It's not a bad thing not to know something and to admit that you don't know it. We think we have to have all the answers all the time. If students ask me a question, I usually can answer it, but there might be a question or two that I can't answer. And if that's the case, I simply say, well, I don't know the answer to that. I'll try to find out. And you can try to find out too. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad teacher. It doesn't make you a bad anything. It's just the case that we don't have all knowledge, and we need to admit to that. So jumping to conclusions can be a serious problem because it's going to affect you in a negative way. It could put a barrier between you and other people that you have relationships with. It may feel to the other person that you're turning on them, and they decide that they don't want to see you anymore. And so therefore it can have negative results, not only to you, but the people that you are dealing with. So let me change this chart here because we've got some more coming up. As I said before, I'm taking my time with this. And the reason I'm taking my time is that there are so many people who do this that it's kind of a common thing. And if you could understand that you do this, then you can do something about it, and your life can turn around. The next one is number 6, magnification or minimization. What is it? Well, you either blow things up out of proportion, or you don't make you make such light of them that they don't occupy your time when they should. So what are some examples? Well, you magnify your errors. That's what you're going to do. I did this wrong. I did that wrong. I didn't answer that question right. I didn't get that job. Whatever that's negative, that you think that's negative in your life, you're going to magnify that, and you're going to put your attention on that. Yes, I got a B. I should have got an A. Yes, I failed a test, but it was horrible. You know, it's a bad test. Not only that, I'm not very smart because I couldn't answer some of the questions on the test. Or it could be anything. It could be a job situation. I messed up a job situation. That means I'm a bad employee. I'm afraid I'm going to get fired. And usually when we think the worst, it's not as bad as we think it is. Sometimes it may be. I mean, I can't brush aside the fact that some things really are bad. I don't want you to be unrealistic, but at the same time, if you think that things are bad all the time, you're probably making mistakes somewhere along the line. Most people make mistakes. Most mistakes are forgivable. You know, unless you're an airplane pilot or you're a surgeon or something like that. Most people make mistakes just in everyday life. I'm not talking about specifics in terms of career choices so much, but just in terms of life. You made a bad comment to somebody. Well, that's me. I can't do anything right. You know, it's just that kind of way. So you magnify your errors. You ran a race, you fell down. You got back up and finished the race. I can't run. I fell down. No attention to the fact that you got up and finished. Now, I have a story which is a true story, and it's a nice story. There was a group of children who had handicaps, mental and physical handicaps, and they were on a race. And they were all excited about this race. They loved to race. It was something that was planned just for them. There were probably about a dozen or so children. And as they were running toward the goal, which wasn't too far because you got to remember they had some handicaps, one of them fell down and started crying. Every single child stopped in their tracks, turned around, walked back to the child that had fallen, who was still on the ground, helped that child up, kissed his hand. I'll kiss you, boo-boo, you'll feel better. Then arm in arm, they linked themselves arm in arm, and they all walked in one line across the whole running area, and they all crossed the finish line at the same time, arm in arm with each other. It was so moving to the people who were in the stands watching that they were driven to tears about it. Because their focus was, let's help this little boy who's fallen. It wasn't, I've got to be the best. If I'm not the best, I'm nothing. This is a race. We're having fun. It's not really a competition. It's a race. Who cares who wins? Let's go back and help that small child. And then they all got up and they walked together. You know, I know that in sports, from what I've read, that the opposing team is supposed to be an enemy, but I can't feel that way. Why not? Because they're doing the same thing you're doing. They're trying to play the best they can so they can win. You're trying to play the best you can so you can win. That's fine. It doesn't make them an enemy to you. It doesn't make you an enemy to them, but that's the way it is. I know that there was a beauty pageant for little children. I'm totally opposed to beauty pageants for children, by the way. There's just too much harm that's done. They get these children all dressed up, and then the parents argue about it. The parents are the ones that are causing the problem, not the kids. And there was one child that was told by her parents, you are the most beautiful. And if you don't win, there's something wrong with them. And you know there's something wrong with them. Well, what are they teaching the small child? They're teaching you, you have to be the best all the time. You have to win all the time. You are the best all the time. So what if the child isn't the best all the time? What do they think? I have hurt my parents deeply. I disappointed them. They can't depend upon me to be the best I can be. Or, all of these people are nothings. You know, I'm the best. I know I'm the best. So therefore, if I don't win, well, there's something wrong with them. And you're teaching them self-concepts that just are not real and are not legitimate in this day and age. Everybody has strong points. Everybody has weak points. So you have to maintain that. You have to be aware of the fact that you're not going to be perfect all the time. So you magnify the things that are a problem. And what do you minimize? To minimize makes unimportant. Well, you minimize the things that everything else. So maybe you did win. Oh, that's nothing. People run fast. I could have run better. I could have made it better. I minimize my success and I magnify my failure. That's what it turns out to be, isn't it? I minimize what I'm good at. I wasn't that good. Other people could do a better job. Why would they ask me to do this? Because other people are smarter than me. So they minimize what's good about themselves, like it's not important or maybe not even real. And then they magnify what's bad about them. Yeah, I can't do this, so I'm not going to even try. I'm not good at that. That's my weak point. My good point, well, that's not so good either. So therefore, they end up by looking at themselves like they're failures, or looking at themselves like they can't get ahead or can't do what's right. And as a result of that, they hurt themselves. You start to believe what you put in your mind, because the mind, as I said before, does not know the difference between a real and an imagined fact. And if you're putting in your mind, I'm kind of dumb, I'm not very bright, I can't do very much, so why should I try? And when I do try, I'm never a success. What are you teaching yourself? Your brain's going to start believing it, because you've kind of, through your thought process, put it in your brain. Your brain is acting like a computer. What is it printing out? If it were printing out something, I am a failure. I am not good. So let's be realistic. There are some things you're good at. There are some things that you are weak at. And it's not a problem being a human being. You're just a human being like everybody else. When you do well, you should give yourself the credit for that. That doesn't mean that you're bragging every moment of every day, patting yourself on the back every day, but it means that you're realistic. I do have skills. I can do well. And on things that I'm weak at, I am weak on certain things, but that's all right. It makes me a human being. It does not make me a failure. So what am I getting at? I'm getting at the fact that when you look at yourself, don't look at yourself as a failure. Look at yourself with both good and weak parts and be a human being, because that's what you are, and that's all right. You weren't created to be perfect, but you weren't created to be a failure either. Most people with healthy self-esteem are somewhere in the middle. I have good points, I have weak points, but that's all right. I can work through it. I'll do the best I can at what I'm good at. The weaker points will take more time, or maybe I'll stay away from them and not get too involved with them, and I'll do the best that I can. And that's what we all should do. So I am going to close it here, and we're going to continue with this until we finish all of them. So so I'm going to close it, as I said, and I hope that you will join me next time.